Welcome back to another episode of STEM and Stilettos. This is your host, Zofia Morales, and today we are going to discuss the delegation cure, why doing less is the key to growing more. But before we dig into that topic, I'd like to invite you to get to know a little bit more about your own personal leadership style. We many times adopt leadership styles and approaches to solve specific problems for ourselves, not recognizing that there are some pitfalls that come along with these. And so I created this quiz to give you insight into where you may be accidentally holding yourself back. So you can check that out at leadershippitfallquiz.com. It takes 2 minutes to gain this valuable insight. And do yourself a favor, give yourself a little gift of insight and check out leadershippitfallquiz.com. And today's guest is Kristin Ginter, and she is known as the Wizard of O.P.S, that's O.P.S, and she is a master of optimizing, prioritizing, and scaling operations for founders and fast-growing teams around the world. With over 2 decades of leadership experience spanning 90 plus countries, she's built a reputation for transforming operational chaos into clarity through sharp strategy, streamlined systems, and sustainable growth plans. As the co-founder of ATXponential, Kristin offers fractional COO services for entrepreneurs scaling from 6 to 8 figures. Her proprietary O.P.S framework, Optimize, Prioritize, and Scale, helps founders delegate with confidence, automate what drains them, and build businesses that don't burn them out. She specializes in team infrastructure, strategic planning, systems implementation, and market expansion, especially for those eyeing the U.S. market. Kristin has led large-scale coaching teams, supported global SaaS launches, and helped companies like the Ask Method improve client retention by 30% through operational innovation. Known for her calm and strategic presence, there we go. She blends high-performance leadership with emotional intelligence and always brings a little magic back behind the curtain. Welcome, Kristin. I'm so happy to have you here with me today.
Hey, Sophia, thanks for having me.
So let's start with a little backstory, because I don't think most of us as little girls go, I'm going to become a fractional COO. What led you into the world of operations, and how did you become the wizard?
Yeah, so great question. One of the things that I don't really share often, but I started at a very young age as an entrepreneur. I had a very entrepreneurial spirit, even as a child. My parents put me into dance at a young age, and I would choreograph my own dances and things like that. But I also knew that I wanted to make money doing it. So I would take cardboard boxes, I would build ticket booths, I'd make my own tickets, and I'd sell the tickets to my family for 25 cents a piece. And, little did I know at that time that that was, the very first soiree into entrepreneurship. But what ended up me being passionate about operations, it was kind of a conglomerate of different things happening in my life. So I was going to school. Went to school for a STEM field, microbiology and chemistry. And I had
I knew we had something in common.
yeah, so I had I had that very process data driven, data oriented thing going on in school. My background was not in science. I never could have imagined in a million years that it would, that my life would take me that way. But I really wanted to be a pharmacist at the time. And so I was, doing all kinds of different office jobs. I've done administrative jobs. And I realized that at every company I was going to, I would start at the very junior, receptionist, maybe a filing clerk, whatever position. And then I would basically get promoted to the highest level position that I could go. And I was always the person that would take on all the different tasks. It wasn't, I never said no. I always said I could figure out do stuff, you know? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us do that, you know, as we're wearing different roles in companies and stuff like that. But what that ended up translating to is me really being the Swiss Army knife of team members, where I could literally jump into any part of a company. And I, you know, if someone, we needed a position to fill, I could at least do it temporarily and I could jump in and learn things really quickly. So as I was doing that, you know, more administrative stuff, I was also going to school for science, and I realized that I really was passionate about making those two things happen. And I started working with entrepreneurs, particularly in 2019, and realized that the skills that I had been acquiring over all of those years were really a lot of the things that entrepreneurs were struggling with, which
Mm.
were the tech pieces and really how to, you know, they have pieces of the puzzle, but how do you make it all work together and fit together so it works and, you know, is a systemized machine that's actually driving business growth.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah,
Because my own experience with entrepreneurship is it's like somebody gives you this 1,000-piece puzzle and dumps it out on the table and goes, and you don't get the box.
yeah, no pictures.
No pictures. Go get them.
Yeah, so I realized, you know, I worked at a business accelerator here in Texas, and then I also worked for, you know, a big company that helps entrepreneurs and worked for their business coaching program. And I started off as really a you know, help desk sort of person, customer service and that sort of thing. And I scaled into operations because when I stepped into that role, there were so many things that I realized I could optimize and, you know, really make it a better system. And so that's really kind of where everything scaled. But it was working with all those entrepreneurs that I started piecing my own pieces to get, you know, of the puzzle together and saying, oh, there's a common thread happening here. And I think I have a solution for it.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I've noticed about this 1,000-piece puzzle, right, is that they mix other puzzles in there too. And so you have to be discerning about what really applies to the picture you're building and what doesn't, which
Absolutely.
is definitely a trick. So,
Absolutely.
speaking of tricks, what are some of the most common bottlenecks you see when a business is getting going and getting some traction? They're like, okay, I think we can scale this thing now.
Yeah. So typically what I see is, especially when you are, you know, when you're a solopreneur, you're wearing all the hats yourself
Oh,
and
God.
that's your baby and you're doing all the different things. So you are the financial person, you're the salesperson, you're the marketing person, you're all, you know, all the different things.
Yes,
Um,
you are the delivery people.
yeah,
Yes.
you know you're the custodian, you know, you're everything in your business. And the thing that I really see people struggle with is when they know that they're at capacity of their tasks, their time, and they're also thinking, I started a business because I'm passionate about this thing, but it's now taken over my life and I'm spending all of my time doing all of the things, and most of the things are things that they're not passionate about.
Or
What I've
even necessarily very good at. Yeah.
it's not their skill set and they're also not passionate about doing it. So it's like that's, you know, but at the beginning you always have to do those things because it's you.
Right.
So what I've realized is as they are scaling, as they're bringing on a VA, as they are doing you know, repeatable tasks in their business, that they really struggle with identifying the tasks that are in their zone of genius, the tasks that light them up, and the tasks that they're good at, right?
Yeah.
And so the first stage of that is just really identifying those key things. Like, what do I enjoy doing? What am I doing that I don't want to do? And what do I just want to find someone that's better at doing? And also just identifying the repeatable tasks that you're doing in your business. Because to me, I use the word delegation interchangeably with automation. So you're either delegating to a technology to complete it, or you're delegating to a human.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And
so that,
I love delegating to an automation, frankly.
yeah,
It's
I
one
mean,
of my favorites.
delegation is my favorite D word for sure. top notch word there. But yeah, so what I've seen though, as they are scaling, so you have the automation piece, but you have to have your processes documented, and a lot of businesses really struggle doing this piece.
Yeah,
And
poke me in the eye with a needle. I want nothing to do with documenting it. I will automate it all day long, but I'm not going to tell you what I did.
right, but if you're going to give a task to another human, you really have to have some sort of process in place, because
Exactly.
you have a way of doing things in your own company, and you have to have some process for it so that when you do have that human come on board, they have a reference tool for it. So, some of the symptoms that I see when they're kind of struggling with this, when they're bringing on, a VA, a part-time person, a contractor, or even your first full-time hire. Here's some symptoms of it. Team members are asking the same questions over and over, right? And so
Yep.
that's taking your time out of your zone of genius to really focus on scaling and growing your business. The other thing I see a lot, and this is, something I advocate for doing either on a semi-annual or an annual basis, is having redundant tools and subscriptions in your business. So, you know,
Mm.
I'm right now in the process of transferring over to Go High Level, and so I'm really looking at all the tools that I'm using and paying different, piecemeal things to make the funnel, flow more efficiently. I'm really looking at those tools that are having redundancies, because that costs you money. At the end of
Yes.
the day, it costs you money. And if you're going to a million different places where you could just kind of automate it into one spot, it's going to save you time as you're switching between tasks that are important
And
for your business.
money, because I got to tell you, the funnel tech adds up in a screaming fast hurry. I mean,
Oh
you're
yeah.
very quickly five, six, seven, $10,000 a year, and you didn't acquire that much stuff, but yeah, you did.
And the big trap of that too is a lot, there's so many new tools that are coming out. If you're in entrepreneurial, communities, you get all these different advertisements on, in front of you all the time, and you'll get free subscriptions, and then it'll auto renew, and you don't remember, and then you start looking at your financials, and you're like,
And
oh,
you're
I've been
going, what is this thing I'm paying $297 for?
Exactly. And so it's, I recommend having just a, regular kind of audit of your own finances, just looking at a month of expenses and saying, okay, what am I actually using? And, should this be here or not?
Yeah.
So that's another one. And then the other thing is when I see founders constantly firefighting, where they have that, feeling that everything that's happening in their business is urgent, you know and when we are in that kind of state of like urgency and everything has to get done now, you're stopping all the strategic activities that you're doing to grow and build your business, because most entrepreneurs, I'm an operations person, so I'm not the visionary creative, but most entrepreneurs are that personality type of visionary, creative. I want to create new things. I want to build new awesome, I've got an idea for this. How do we make it happen? Those sort of things. And so when you're in your zone of genius as a visionary, you are building those things that are strategically growing your business and growing yourself in your business. And when you're constantly firefighting in those things in the weeds, you're doing yourself and your business a disservice, because you're constantly taking away from those things to really build the business.
Yeah. Well, and if you see yourself in this description, what what is the next thing you should be doing? How
Yes.
do you get out of this firefighting mode and all the bucks stop with me? There aren't bucks that stop with anyone else.
Yeah, exactly. So I recommend, very first step, do a 7-day audit on your time. And as an entrepreneur, I recommend that you're doing not only the time that you're spending in your business, but you are also looking at the time that you're spending on your personal activities,
Oh,
because
amen.
your first hire may need to be a personal assistant rather than a virtual one. And so it's really kind of looking at those, looking at your time and starting just to create a task list of what you're spending your time, personal time and time on your business, and just making a list of all those things and the amount of time that you're doing in those things. So that's like step one. And then at the end of the week, you're going through that list and you're saying, is this a task I should be doing? Is this a task that lights me up? Does this require me for this task? And is this task repeatable, or and could it be systematized? And so you're
Yeah.
kind of going through this whole process of, this is what I'm doing with real data. And then you're also looking at where things excite you, where things don't excite you, and kind of scoring it for yourself so you can start making those, decisions.
Exactly. And I'm going to plus one your advice because I've done this exercise periodically in my life. And I've found that although my husband and I do divide household chores, the daily repeatable stuff that adds up is what falls in my column. And he gets like the once a week kind of stuff, and it's not balanced. So there was some renegotiating that could be done there. And I also found just what you were saying, that although I had an assistant in my business, I didn't have any assistant in the household. And I was literally part-time in my quote unquote full-time business because of the household stuff. Yeah. So it was a real eye opener.
Yeah. So, very first step is just kind of doing your own time audit on yourself. And I recommend 7 days because it'll give you, your weekend activities and your work activities. And, just being very disciplined about recording that on a daily basis.
Yeah. And there's some amazing software out there that can help with that as well, of different types of
Absolutely.
time trackers. And I don't remember all the names of them, but if you Google, you'll see all of the latest and greatest, right?
Yeah, Toggle's one that I use a lot, but also, it doesn't have to be over complicated. You can just
Yeah.
open up a Google sheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and just create some columns and just do it.
Yeah.
I
Every
always
15 minutes, what am I touching? Yeah.
Right. Or, at the end of the day, if I'm a calendar person, so I block everything off. So, if you're diligent about your calendar and stuff, you can kind of also at the end of the day look at it and fill it in as well.
Yeah. No, I wing it too much. I really have to do the 15-minute interval. Otherwise, I'll be like, geez, it's noon and what did I accomplish? I've been busy the whole time. So, yeah, I love that. I love that. So, we are coming up on our first break already. Can you believe? And I think what I'd like you to do, if you've listened to the show at all, I invite homework over the breaks. Grab your pen, grab your piece of paper, and I'd like you to take your swag at where you think your time is going, because I always find it enlightening to compare what I think is happening to what actually happens when I do the time tracking exercise. So take a swag of where you think your time is going right now and hang with us. We'll be right back from the break. Thanks for hanging in with us through the break. This is Zofia Morales, and I am back with Kristin Ginter, the Wizard of O.P.S. And over the break, I asked you to spend a little time on where you think your time is going before you commit to yourself to do this 7-day time audit. And it will be a commitment to yourself, and I want to hear how it goes. So drop me an email and say, I'm going to do it, first of all. That way we know you're going to be accountable. And then at the end, I want to hear how the audit went. And you can send that to Zofia, Zofia, at steminstilettos.com, Zofia at steminstilettos.com. And let's start getting our arms around what all you are doing in your life and make that work a little bit better. So, Kristin, let's talk about the elephant in the room, because very often we know we need help, but we have trouble justifying that. Why is it that so many entrepreneurs wait way too long before they bring in any kind of operational support? And what does it cost them when they make that decision? Because it's easy to go, oh, I'm saving money. But what's really happening?
Well, that's a big question. But here's the truth that no one tells you. By the time that you feel like you need operational support, you are already paying the price for it. And when founders delay bringing in operational help, a few things start happening behind the scenes, slowly at first, and then it kind of starts accelerating, kind of snowballs for them. So there's some key areas that are kind of signs of when this stuff is happening and what the costs are, right? So number one, the founder, the entrepreneur becomes the bottleneck. They're making every decision. They have a team, but the team can't move without them unless there's, some sort of approval.
Yes, if you
And
step away, the building burns down.
exactly. And things slow down, operationally. Just the momentum of a business stops when everything has to stop for one person to give a green light on a decision. And so the reason why we put team members in place is because we're hiring capable people that are in their zones of genius to help you. But your systems aren't clear, so they're lacking the decision-making abilities to really push things forward. And so an example of this would be if you wake up to 37 Slack messages every morning, and they could all have been things that were answered if your processes were written down or there was some sort of repository for people to kind of refer to. So that's kind of number one. The second one, I kind of touched on this earlier, is you're scaling chaos, not
Yes.
strategy. So
Yes, and it only gets worse the bigger it gets.
yeah, I mean, we've all heard the expression more money, more problems. And it's same sort of thing, more clients, more revenue, more problems. And what I see happen so often, and no shame in this. I'm not shaming anyone for doing this. We've all done it. But you start duct taping solutions together and you start
Mm-hmm.
stacking tools because you need to find, this one thing to help the other thing because you had this one problem that one software couldn't do. And then
And then it
and then
gets institutionalized in cement when you put it into an SOP.
right. And then you're like, oh, I'm still I have a hole in my business here, and you start over hiring for positions because you think that that's, you actually need someone else in the position when it's really there's probably redundant tasks being done or, just different things like that. And so and it's such a tricky mindset when this is happening because it feels like you're growing because you're like, yes, I'm getting clients, I'm getting customers. But
And
what's
my
happening,
team is bigger. And
I
yes.
got a bigger team, I got people to pay, and by the way, when that happens and you're scaling in chaos, you're generally not paying yourself. You're working to pay your team, which is a big no-no in my
Well,
book.
that's another big red flag, right?
Exactly. But so when you have all these things that, we're all told, like, once you hit 6 figures or once you hit 7 figures, there's all
All the
these,
problems will sort themselves out. Yes. No, there's
yes,
no
there's all these
Wonderland. I'm sorry.
there's all these milestones. But what's happening when you're duct taping all those pieces together is you're just multiplying your inefficiencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, like at the end of the day, you're just going to be in that firefighting loop continuously. And so that's, really the next phase that I see in that. And then we've all heard about this phase, and this is really when the burnout starts setting in, right? When we're needed for every decision in our business, decision fatigue starts creeping in. Your creative energy starts getting replaced by task triage. And I've seen it happen a lot of times. And I really believe that this is part of why a lot of entrepreneurs don't make it, is they start resenting that business that they once loved.
Right. Yeah.
And to me, that's the saddest part, because what I've realized is that most entrepreneurs are their ideal clients. We started something because we had a problem, we were able to overcome it, and we want to share that with other people. And so at the base of it, I won't say every entrepreneur, but I would say the majority of entrepreneurs that I've worked with, they start their business because they are passionate about what they do and they really want to help people solve a problem. And that to me is the saddest thing to happen, is when entrepreneurs get burnt out because they don't have the proper systems in place. They resent the business that they started to build and they give up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like what I'm hearing is there are operational efficiencies that take away your ability to have the profit and the salary that you need to be able to support your life and yourself in a manner in which you can move forward. The chaos, of course, just makes everybody insane. You probably also are losing clients and orders in the chaos that's going on. And ultimately, you're going to crash and burn with the business. It all is going to go up in flames. Now,
it ends up leading into, all these missed opportunities without
yeah,
operational coordination. Like, you can't say yes to strategic partnerships because you don't have the bandwidth. You can't expand it to new markets. You can't really bring in big hires. You're probably still going to be in the loop of hiring contractors or fractional people. And it's really because the back end of your business can't hold the weight of all the things that you're trying to do.
right. Well, and this is like the third time that hires have come up in this conversation. I'd kind of like to dig into hires a little bit with you because it's easy and tempting when you're in this growing scramble mode to just grab the next available body. Your brother's cousin's nephew's best friend, okay? They're available, knows a little something about something, and you're just going to slam them in the role and keep going, as opposed to taking some time and being a little bit more strategic, because you mentioned that capable people are an important part of delegating. And a lot of times we don't, as entrepreneurs, understand that a warm body is sometimes worse than an empty seat.
Yes.
So what is your approach to hiring? What do you recommend to people who feel like I need somebody right now because I'm drowning? And how do you balance that urgency with finding an actual A player?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I'll go back to the time study because that's going to be your number one indicator of your first hire. The things that you are spending your time on that don't give you joy, that you're not good at, that someone that's a professional at doing that thing could probably take 30 minutes and it took you 30 hours.
Yeah,
Those,
exactly.
those sort of things. So yeah, I really think that the time study is first the indicator of the role that you need to hire. So you need to
Right.
identify really the area of your business that is going to start freeing up that time for yourself. So that's, step number one. But as far as the hiring process goes, I always take, if someone refers.
Can I pause you for a second before we go into the actual hiring process?
Yeah,
Because having done a few of these time studies myself
yeah.
and trying to narrow in on what that first role should be, a lot of times I get down to the end of one of these things and it's like, I need to hire 6 different people. How do we start to prioritize which one is really the pivotal hire to make? And I don't think it's always the quote unquote cheap one.
Right. Yes. So the cheapest hire is not always the first hire. The things that I say that you should always be looking for, especially if you have multiple ones, I think a lot of people, marketing is generally an area that they look at first because, let's be real, if you have, 6 different channels that you're promoting yourself on, it starts to
It's
feel very
it's a
cumbersome.
full-time job. Yes.
Yeah, so I generally see kind of more of a VA customer support sort of person or a marketing person is generally a first hire that someone makes. But if you had 6 roles, right, I would be looking at the ones that are going to be revenue generating or are going to be client fulfillment portion. So I would look at kind of where then you're kind of looking at in your business where things are kind of needing to put some fuel on them, right? So if it's marketing because you don't have enough clients in your funnel or you're not bringing in enough revenue, then marketing is probably your piece of it. If you have clients, but you're really struggling on the fulfillment side of your business, then there's probably some leaks that are happening in the client onboarding process that probably need to be smoothed out, probably need a little bit of customer support stuff there to, just make sure that people are, at the end of the day, we're all human. We have AI assistants. I know all of us, most of us are using them at this point, but your customer is a human and you want to have that white glove, excellent experience for everybody that's working with you because the first touch points when someone, pays you money or signs that contract, those first experiences that they have after that point are what really gives them the confidence in continuing with you. And
Yeah,
so
and probably Robbie Robot is not the first experience you want them to have.
exactly. And so, I would just kind of prioritize tasks, see where, what sort of roles you need. And then when you're looking at your business, do I need clients in my funnel? Am I not fulfilling? Do I need more customer support? So you're kind of also, taking the rubric and, lining them up and saying, okay, this is kind of where things need to go. And this is where I'm focusing on for my business.
I like that. Now let's go back to hiring. How do we actually find these amazing, capable people?
Yes. So, there's all these different sites like Fiverr and, kind of different work related sites. I personally would rather work with someone that I'm going to be on a more long-term contract basis with, because those kind of piecemeal sort of hiring pieces, to me, they're great at the beginning of your business and you have some smaller things that you just need to get done and get out the door. But if you really want to bring on someone, in your business, you want them to kind of have more of a relationship with you longer term.
Yeah,
That being
continuity
said,
is important with like fulfillment, for example.
exactly. And so part of that, to me, I've found a lot of great people on LinkedIn. That's kind of my go-to strategy for finding people. I put calls out on my social media if I'm hiring for certain positions or that sort of thing, and people will recommend people, but I do end up putting them all through the same process, whether they're a recommendation or not. And so there's kind of a tier of things that I do. Of course, it's, can I see your resume? That's number
Yeah,
one. Do you
exactly.
actually have the experience that you say you do?
That'd be
Um,
number two.
right. And what I like to do to kind of check that piece is I give a micro task, something that would take them about 5 to 10 minutes, because you also don't want to give a whole, exercise to someone that feels like, well, why aren't they paying me to do this? Like I
Yeah.
could, feels like that you're taking advantage of
Yeah,
them. And
you're trying to get free work out of me here.
right. And I have run into that kind of thing in the hiring industry where, it seems like they've given you this monumental task that's probably what they should be hiring someone for. So it's giving them a micro task that displays that what they say they can do, they can do. So, for example, if you had a copywriter or something like that, you would, have them, here's basically what I want you to write about. Here's some of my past work. Can you write a copy, for me about this on this subject. And so you're kind of doing that. If you're looking for an operations person, you might have a spreadsheet or something like that that you want organized in a certain way. I leave it up to the person. Show me how you would organize this data based on this scenario. To me, that's a very strong
The
indicator.
measure that you're looking for. Yeah, I like
Yeah, so
that.
just finding like, small micro tasks, not them actually digging around in your business and doing things, but just little tasks that could take them 5 to 10 minutes to display that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I have a little, I don't know if it's a micro task, it's a test that I oftentimes will put into a job ad, especially if I'm hiring for like a detail oriented type position. And that is, I give them a set of very specific instructions on how to apply. And
Mhm.
there are specific phrases they need to use at different stages in order to show that they have read and followed the directions. And if they don't do that, they have flunked the tests and they don't go any further. Yeah.
Yeah, I've even seen on bigger teams that I've worked with, they have people that are onboarding or potential, hires. They even have them do personality tests and things like that to see how they would fit in with the company culture. So there's, a multitude of different tasks. If you have someone that's typing, give them a typing test. It's
Yeah,
those sort of things. That
exactly.
are just kind of pragmatic approaches to saying, can that person actually do what they say they're going to do? But yeah, great point. Putting things in the subject line, having key phrases, just making sure that people are detail oriented. I think any job that you're hiring for, there does need to be some level of that, because at the end of the day, you don't want a whole bunch of mistakes in the things that you're making, because then we're back to the top of having to,
Yeah, put out
fire
fires and
somebody.
yeah,
So we
and
don't want
correct
that.
all of that. Okay, so we're looking on LinkedIn, we're getting recommendations, we've got our micro tasks. How do we separate out the people who talk a good story from the ones who really truly are A players?
Yeah, so I generally, before I even meet with them in person, I will have them do a short video, a 2 to 3 minute video, and just kind of have them promote themselves. So that gives you some indications about, it helps you weed out kind of some of the weird personalities off the top, or ones that you don't really feel that would be right for the role. If you have back end people that aren't really interfacing with people, then it doesn't matter as much, but just their ability to talk about themselves with confidence. I think, anyone who's looked for a job knows that they have to enter the interview process with some sort of confidence about what they're speaking with. And when you're doing the sort of short video, you can see if they're making eye contact, if they are speaking succinctly about the things that they're talking about, and those sort of things. So I kind of look at the micro task, the resume, and the actual person themselves. And that's kind of step one of the process.
I like that. And what happens when you get to step two?
Step two is when I'm really asking, I've weeded out the people that I know didn't follow instructions, didn't do the micro tasks the way that I wanted, or the way that made sense to me, or, they put off weird flags in the video. I've weeded those people out, and then I'm inviting them for an actual, Zoom,
For an
usually,
actual conversation?
yeah, an actual real conversation.
Yeah, okay. And do you do those over Zoom, in person? Does it matter?
For me, I do I can work from anywhere, so I do everything on Zoom. And I think that the other thing that I think that is advantageous to that is that you have a whole bigger pool of people that you can work with if you're not geographically confined. So you have the ability to find someone that's right for the role, that may not be, in your same city.
Yeah, which is nice. It gives you the whole world to go find your A players.
Exactly. Just broadens the horizons.
Okay, and we've talked to a few people, and I know I'm one of these people. When once I've made that personal connection with someone, it's kind of hard for me to go, and no, thank you. So when we come back from the break, I want to talk about that decision step beyond that.
Absolutely.
So let's see, what would be good homework over this break? What do you think? How about, let's say, if you're thinking about, if you have a position that has kind of come in your mind that you think you might want to be able to fill or delegate into, uh, think about a possible micro task that you could be assigning to make sure that you're getting someone with the skill sets that you need in order to make it successful. So that's your homework over the break, and hang with us. We'll be right back. Thanks for hanging in with us through the break. This is Zofia Morales, and I'm back with the amazing and wonderful Wizard of O.P.S, Kristin Ginter. So, before the break, we've had screened out a bunch of not A players. We had some potential A players that we're having actual conversations with. How do we decide after we've met all these amazing people?
Yeah, so, at the end of the day, I think what the final factor that I see being the most successful is just looking at who's going to be the best fit in your company's culture. And I've had some very difficult times where I've had really two, great candidates where I wish I could hire them both, but we just didn't have the budget at the time to do it. And so I just had to make a choice of, do I think this person is going to be a better fit for the company, right? But with that being said, there's ways that you can kind of say no, but keep the door open so that if that didn't work out, or you do end up having the budget or you're expanding your team, that you can bring that person on. So,
Okay,
there's
so do share. How do we say no without burning bridges? Because I know a lot of us don't find no to be our friend.
Yeah, so, at the end of the day, we've all heard no. It's probably one of the first words that we learn as toddlers. Our parents say it
That's
to us
right.
a million
No.
times. We probably hear no more than we hear yes in a lifetime, right? And I rejection is obviously a hard thing to deal with for anyone. But I really think candidates remember how you made them feel, and especially when you say no. So there's really fine ways that you can, you know, tap that line and not be personally rejecting them. It's just at this time it's not the right fit, or I really wish I could, I really wish I could hire you, but at this time so I'll get into some more specific language around it. But the number one thing is, if someone enters the process with me and we've exchanged emails, and this is even before I've gotten to the, Zoom talking to a person face to face phase, I make sure that they get an email from me, because the worst thing I think a company can do
God.
is that you go through all of this stuff, you go through all these hurdles, you've, spent your time, sending out emails, creating a video, doing these micro steps, and then you
You're
don't hear
left
from
in
them.
limbo. Yeah, exactly.
And
Did they get it? Did they not get it? Did they care? Do they Yeah, what happened here?
so worse than hearing no is hearing nothing, in my opinion, and feeling like you've been ghosted and that you spent all this time and energy on something and you're not getting any sort of feedback on it. That is the number one way to create resentment. And it damages your company reputation, and it can come back to, bite you in the end.
Yeah.
Um, so if they gave you your time, they deserve some clarity from you. And that's like the number one thing that I would suggest is every person that enters my process, they get an email from me no matter where they drop off at the process. Of course, it gets a little bit more personalized the deeper you go into the process. But I have a rule for myself that every single person gets an email. So that's number
Yeah.
one.
I like that. I like that. And I'm reading a book right now called The Next Conversation. That's from a lawyer who specializes in like clear communication and kindness and compassion and all of that kind of stuff that you don't normally associate with lawyers. Uh, but one of the things that he said that has really stuck with me is if you're going to have a difficult conversation with someone, and I would class this as a difficult conversation, uh, the kindest thing is to lead with the bottom line as opposed to pussyfooting around it. And so to lead with, we're not going to be able to move forward in this process with you. We really appreciate your time and your dedication, the wanting to engage with us, and whatever else you want to say, but lead with it's not going further, because anything else is kind of leading them on in a way.
Yeah, and I will say too, I like to avoid fluffy or non-committal language. And here's
Mm-hmm.
what I classify this as. We went in a different direction,
Oh yes.
or
Oh God.
or we just felt like it wasn't quite a right fit. So to me, those are very non-committal things to say to someone.
Yeah.
So
And
I
it doesn't give them any direction to have improved the interaction or made their application more successful.
Exactly. And, at the end of the day, your feedback could help them get their next role, right? So instead of that kind of more fluffy language, I like to say, hey, we were really, impressed with X, but ultimately we chose a candidate that had deeper experience with Y,
Mm,
and it gives them a very clear, I saw you, I know that you have skills, but you weren't as strong in this area, which is really, what we're looking
more
for
of
right
what we needed. Yeah. The other direction we needed to go.
now.
Said
Yeah, but
concretely.
it gives them that direction and not just leaving it vague, like we were in a
Yeah.
different direction, right? And like I said, the emails that I write are more personalized the farther they get in the process. So if they kind of drop off in the first phase, it's more of a generic templated, response to them. But as they really, get deeper in the process, I like to give them more impactful emails and maybe a little bit more feedback. I don't like to go into giving a whole lot of feedback, and sometimes I've had them come back even after I've given, an email with feedback and said, "Could you give me more feedback?" And I'm like, "No."
No,
So
nope. You've gotten what you're getting.
but if they do ask, and some people are comfortable doing this, I feel that I give enough in my responses. But if they do ask and you're comfortable, just share a brief, insight that they could grow from. It could be something as small as, um, I didn't feel like your video was professional, or your writing wasn't very, you can have a specific thing that's not a personal attack on them to,
Yes.
if people are really seeking improvement and they're asking for feedback, they generally are, you can really kind of nudge it without being a personal dig on them. So something I like to use there, if you are going to do feedback, is we'd love to see stronger examples of cross-functional leadership in your next interviews. Your industry knowledge was spot on, but maybe they didn't give examples, or they didn't show how their real experience translated into the tasks that you're hiring for in your company and that sort of thing. And so it could be those sort of little delineations that can help them in their next role.
Excellent. So quick, well, maybe it'll be a quick question. I can't promise that. But when you're looking at your list of stuff that you're doing and trying to offload from your plate, what are the decision points that you use to weigh in whether it makes more sense to do an automation or it makes more sense to hire a human?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to me, if I have a task that I've done like 100 times,
And
um,
you just can't face doing it 101.
yeah, so if it's a task, I like to look at tasks that are more response related, or tasks like putting things on spreadsheets, or just more of your internal process tasks, I will say, are really what
Mm-hmm.
I look at automating first. For me personally, the first thing I automated in my business was my client onboarding process, because I wanted to have that really, good customer experience. But if it's things like, you have events regularly, or you have workshops, or, summits, or different things like that, and you're keeping track of your registrations, and, you have a process where people are signing up to pay some sort of money, and they have to get from money to a Zoom class or something like that. Everything from that process, from the time that they pay, to the emails that they get, to the Zoom registration, to all those pieces, that can generally be automated pretty easily. And those are tasks that have like finite, this, when this happens, this needs to happen. So it's a
Exactly.
very, when X happens, Y needs to happen. And those are the tasks that I like to look at first as far as automating things. Now, as far as when it's to delegate to a human, it's the things that need a human touch. Like, I delegate my marketing assets. Like, I create all my copy, I do all of my own writing, but I don't enjoy doing the design aspects of marketing. I don't like creating graphics. I don't, I
You're
have the
not an
eye of
infographic girl.
a, I have the eye of a third grader when it comes to that sort of art, and so it's something that I can give to someone that has a skill set, that trained for that, or has been doing that for a while, that enjoys doing that sort of thing. I can give them a vision, I can give them colors. I'm not too picky about a lot of things personally. I know some people are. But me personally, I'm like, hey, does it have my colors? Does it have my logo? Does it look like a third grader did it? Okay, good. Let's get it out the door. So,
So is it good or bad if it looks like a third grader did?
well, it depends on the third grader. To me, I just don't have the design eye, or, want to really spend my time doing that. So yeah, those are the sort of things that I look at, things that need a human touch. If you have a customer service sort of, based business, it's really great to have a human answering other humans, because in the world that we live in, with so much automated and AI and all of those things, the ways that you can stand out in your business are having that human touch integrated, and really having good customer experiences. So those are kind of the areas where you're more customer facing, is where I would focus on those sort of tasks, where you're looking at a human. And if you can clearly say, when this happens, this needs to happen, and it doesn't take a whole lot of creativity or anything to make it happen, then those are the sort of tasks that you can really lean in to automate.
I love that. So we're getting down to the tail end of the program, and I know you have things you can offer to our guests here that will make their lives so much easier. So answer me a quick question. Um, what is a fractional COO, and how do you know if you're ready for one? And if you are ready for one, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, great question. So, a fractional COO is basically any fractional team member is someone that comes in, they're not hired on a full-time basis, but you're basically paying them a fraction of the cost for a fraction of a full-time employee. Generally, a fractional person has a, whole different experience of kind of more professional, strategic, and also doing the in the weed sort of tasks. So I say, I don't think everybody's ready to have a fractional retainer sort of person in their business. But the first step is really doing, getting through these sort of audits, your time audit first. I have my own internal audit that I work with clients. My ops snapshot is, a 5 to 10 minute assessment that people can take, and I can give them the top 3 bottlenecks in their business using my framework, optimize, prioritize, scale. And so I can really dial in very quickly on those sort of things in a business, and then kind of give an action plan based on those things. So I would say if a fractional person says that you need them, I would push back on that and say that you should talk to them first about what your needs truly are, because it could be something small that you could tweak in your business, and you don't need to have someone on an ongoing retainer basis. So in addition to fractional COO, I am also like a strategist, a operations person. We all have different names that we adopt over time. But if you want to connect with me, the best way is to go to, I'll give you a link, and it's go ATXponential, and I'll spell that out. It's ATXponential.com
And we will
forward
put that in the show notes.
yes. .com/about/me. And you can find all of my social media stuff. You can join my mailing list, which every week I'm giving away free resources to help you really with conversations with your team, task delegation. I have a free resource in every email every week that you can get for free. And that's really the best way to reach out to me. I'm on every social media as the Wizard of O.P.S, and Kristin Ginter on LinkedIn. So I welcome anyone to connect with me, and I'd love to connect with you there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom with us today, Kristin.
Thank you so much for having me, Zofia. That was so fun.
And thank you for joining us today. I hope this has been helpful and helps to move you through your chaos of growing your baby into something amazing that makes a great difference in the world for yourself and your employees and your customers. And reach out to me, Zofia, Zofia, at stemandstilettos.com. Let me know how you like the show, who I should talk to, if there are other topics you want me to take on. And until next week, go